Have you ever felt that certain marks don't appear on your skin, but are etched deep within your soul? Some scars aren't on the body, they're in the soul. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Imagine returning from a war, where every sound, every smell, and every memory become silent battles that continue even after the battlefield is long gone. This is the point where many stories go untold, where pain hides behind forced smiles and sleepless nights. What you'll discover now may surprise you, because this isn't just the story of a soldier, it's also a mirror of our own invisible wars. How many times have you carried within you memories that seem to weigh more than any physical burden? Situations no one sees but that continue to bleed inside? Returning to life after war isn't always filled with parades or applause, but with silence, solitude, and memories that insist on screaming in the mind. The soldier we're about to talk about experienced this side of life, a place where peace seemed impossible, where every memory was a painful reminder of what had been lost. But it was precisely in this setting that something extraordinary began to happen. Stay with me until the end, because you'll experience firsthand how hope can be born in the most unlikely places. We're not just talking about bombs, trenches, and guns. Real war begins when a soldier tries to sleep and the memories won't let him. When the silence of the night is filled with the echoes of voices that no longer exist. This invisible struggle is often more difficult than facing the enemy on the field. Have you ever been there? Have you ever tried to explain a pain no one can see? That's where this story resonates deeply, because it shows us that invisible scars also require care, attention, and courage to be faced. While many saw only a man returned home, inside he felt like a prisoner on a battlefield that never ended. Family breakfast could be interrupted by a loud crack that sent him back to the trenches. A casual conversation could awaken memories that consumed him. It was like living between two worlds, the present, which demanded normalcy, and the past, which never stopped demanding its presence. But the question that lingered was, would it ever be possible to find peace amidst so many memories? This is the point that makes us reflect, because deep down, we all have our own personal battles. Perhaps they're not wars in distant countries, but losses, fears, regrets, or pain that insist on lingering. This soldier, with his invisible scars, helps us see something greater, that the real struggle takes place within us. And it is precisely in this intimate territory, where pain seems invincible, that an unexpected chance for healing can arise. Throughout this journey, you'll realize we're not just talking about survival, but about transformation. Because there are moments when suffering seems absolute, but that's exactly when life prepares a new path. What this soldier discovered wasn't easy. It didn't happen overnight, and it certainly wasn't without tears. But the result was so profound that it became a lesson for anyone who has ever felt broken inside. And now, we come to the beginning of this story that promises to move you. A tale that speaks not only of war, but of reunion, resilience, and the strength that arises precisely from our greatest weaknesses. Prepare to immerse yourself in a true testimony of pain, struggle, and overcoming, because what follows will show how someone can find peace where there were only memories. And as you follow this journey, you may have already felt something awaken within you. Perhaps a memory, some pain, or even a forgotten hope has surfaced. That's precisely why I want to invite you to participate in this conversation in a very special way. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what has touched you most so far. Sharing your experience or even a simple opinion can be the bridge someone else needs to realize they're not alone on this journey. And look, every comment, every word you write below not only strengthens this space but creates a real support network where stories intersect and lives can be transformed. This is how we go beyond a video, by building together a community that understands, welcomes, and inspires. So if this message has touched your heart in any way, don't forget to like the video. This simple gesture shows that this type of content is valuable to you and helps spread the message to many more people who also need to hear it. And if you want to continue walking with us, following more stories that move, reflect, and strengthen, subscribe to the channel. It's your participation that makes this project grow, that keeps alive the flame of bringing stories that often don't find space elsewhere. Your presence here isn't just a number, it's an essential part of this story we're building together. And now, returning to our narrative, what this soldier experienced next will reveal how even the darkest nights can hide the beginning of a new dawn. When we think of war, the first image that usually comes to mind is battlefields, explosions, and visible clashes. But there's a silent war, much more difficult to explain, that begins just when everything seems over. The soldier returns home, is greeted with hugs, reunited with family and friends, but within him lies a field of ruins that no one sees. Society believes the fight is over, but in reality, it was at that moment that the most intense battles began. Invisible scars, lingering memories, and the constant feeling that something still imprisons you. How many times have you faced a struggle that no one could see? This soldier didn't just carry the memory of deafening sounds or images of destruction. He carried a seemingly endless void. Each memory loomed like a hidden enemy, always ready to surprise him in the most ordinary moments of the day. A simple conversation could become a trigger. A sudden noise made him relive scenes he'd rather forget. It was as if the war had changed scenery, but not ended. And this is where many fail to understand. The invisible battle is real and it demands redoubled strength. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a hidden truth behind these stories. Society often applauds the return of survivors, but little is said about the emotional impact that lingers. It's like watching a movie halfway through. We see the hero return, but we don't get to see the next chapters, where the mind must reorganize and the heart relearn how to live. This revelation can be harsh but necessary, because if we don't see the weight of these scars, we'll never be able to truly understand the transformation they demand. This man who seemed strong on the outside was actually fragile on the inside. The pressure to stand firm in front of his family, the obligation to demonstrate resilience, the fear of being seen as broken, this placed him in even greater conflict. He struggled not only with his memories, but also with the expectations of others. And here's a detail worth noting. How many of us have donned masks to hide inner pain, believing we wouldn't be understood? How many decisions have we made in silence just to appear okay? This mindset of hiding weaknesses only deepens the wound. Behind the scenes of this struggle, he began to realize he had to choose between remaining a prisoner of the past or making room for a new journey. The decision wasn't simple because each step seemed to carry the risk of falling back into the abyss of memories, but it was in this duality that something powerful was born. The awareness that transformation requires courage. It's not just about forgetting what happened, but about learning to live with what cannot be erased. The hidden truth is that no one emerges from a war the same, and perhaps true victory lies in accepting that change is also part of the process. And here comes another essential point: the impact of the choices we make after facing moments of pain. The soldier began to realize that his life could not be defined solely by the horrors he experienced, but also by the decisions he would make from then on. Every gesture, every attitude, every small step toward healing had the power to rewrite his story. And this applies to all of us. Whether your battle was on a distant field or within your own home, how you choose to deal with it determines the path of your transformation. This journey isn't linear, it isn't quick, and it isn't always understood by others. He faced sleepless nights, days of absolute silence, and moments when he considered giving up. But at the same time, he began to discover that there was a thread of hope amidst the chaos. This thread could be found in a kind word, an understanding look, a moment of prayer, or simply in the act of taking a deep breath and allowing himself to continue. The most surprising thing is that, little by little, he began to understand that he didn't need to overcome all the memories at once, but rather learn to walk with them without being destroyed by them. The truth is that often, the greatest lessons come from the greatest pain. This soldier found in his invisible scars not only memories of suffering, but also signs of resilience, courage, and humanity. It was through pain that he began to see a new purpose, and this purpose led him to a life different from the one he imagined. What seemed like an unbearable burden began to transform into a living testament to the possibility of recovery. And this reflection isn't just about him, but about all of us, because deep down, each person carries silent battles. Some fight against memories, others against feelings of loss, and still others against the fear of not being enough. But what unites all these stories is the possibility of change. There is a strength that is only revealed when we face our own abysses. There is a new vision of life that only emerges when we decide not to let the past define us. This is where the narrative begins to take on a different light. Because if up until now we've spoken of pain and scars, now the element that changes everything begins to emerge: the search for peace. A search that doesn't erase the past, but transforms the present. A search that demands dedication, patience, and faith in a different future. And that's exactly what this soldier began to experience, one step at a time, understanding that his scars weren't just marks of pain, but reminders of survival. And to make this conversation even more lively, I want to extend a special invitation. Comment below, "I'm on this journey too." This simple phrase is a way to show that, even in different struggles, we are all connected by the same truth, that there is always a path to transformation when we choose to face our invisible battles. The weight of memories was overwhelming. It wasn't just about remembering events, but reliving them as if they had never ended. Every door creak became the sound of a gunshot. Every sudden shadow evoked the presence of an enemy. Every deep silence of dawn brought back the screams that once echoed in distant fields. The body was at home, but the mind remained trapped in battles that never ended. It was as if the war had infiltrated the very breath, reminding us at every moment that peace was still a mirage. These memories didn't ask for permission to surface. They arrived without warning in mundane moments, interrupting a coffee, a conversation, or even a simple glance in the mirror. The soldier knew that no one around him could fully understand what was happening inside him, and this further heightened the feeling of isolation. The hidden truth is that many invisible scars are harder to bear than physical wounds. They don't have bandages, they don't heal with ointments, and they don't receive the attention of most people. How many people do you know who carry an internal war while, on the outside, appearing to be living a normal life? The nights were the cruelest. While everyone else slept, he fought silent battles against images that insisted on invading his mind. Sleep came in fragments, and the nightmares were so intense that waking felt like a mere change of scenery, without any relief. With each interrupted dawn, the feeling of exhaustion accumulated, eroding his energy and hope. The mentality of being constantly on alert persisted, as if danger could reappear at any moment. This constant state of vigilance made it impossible to relax, as if war had become an inseparable companion. And it wasn't just about what he saw, but about what he felt. The loss of companions, the helplessness in the face of impossible situations, the guilt of having survived when others didn't return. These memories carried such a profound emotional impact that they became a daily burden. They were memories that didn't respect time, that appeared suddenly without asking permission, and made his heart race as if everything were happening again. The journey back wasn't just physical, but a constant plunge into a past that refused to be left behind. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because what we often fail to realize is that these triggers aren't limited to the military. Many people who have never set foot on a battlefield also carry painful memories that silently shape their lives. It could be the memory of a loss, a childhood trauma, a heartbreak, or even a harsh word that echoes in their mind. These are internal wars waged behind the scenes, invisible to others but as real as any physical confrontation. The impact of these memories is immense. They shape behaviors, influence decisions, alter dreams, and create invisible barriers that few can understand. The soldier, dealing with these memories, felt like his mind was a minefield. Any misstep could trigger an emotional explosion. And how many of us walk this path too, treading carefully within our own history, trying to avoid memories that hurt more than we'd like to admit? This hidden truth is difficult to face but necessary. It's not just what we experience, but how we carry those experiences that defines the direction of our journey. The impact of memories is not uniform. Some crush, others teach, and many remain silent, waiting for the moment to be acknowledged. It's at this point that the story becomes even more human, because it reveals something universal. Everyone, at some point, faces battles no one can see. And yet, we move forward, disguising the scars, trying to smile when inside we still bleed. Transformation begins when we have the courage to admit this burden and seek ways to deal with it. These paths aren't always clear, but the decision to face them opens the possibility of healing. The soldier was about to discover this, but first, he had to face the weight of his own memories to the limit. Comment there. That makes sense to me. Loneliness became his most constant companion. He didn't choose to isolate himself suddenly. It happened gradually, as if life were silently closing doors around him. At first he even tried to share his feelings with those closest to him, but soon realized his words fell on deaf ears. How could he explain that a simple noise in the street made him lose control of his own body? How could he describe the chill that gripped him when a memory surfaced without warning? It was easier to remain silent, and this silence built an invisible wall between him and the world. In the background of his mind, the war still echoed. While others went about their daily lives, laughed at family dinners, or made plans for the future, he felt like an outside observer. He was present, but he didn't feel like he belonged. The hidden truth is that isolation isn't just about physical distance, but also about emotional absence, a profound disconnection that corrodes the soul. He distanced himself not because he wanted to, but because he believed no one could understand the intensity of his pain. And how many of us have felt this way, surrounded by people, yet feeling completely alone? Nights were the cruelest moments. He avoided sleep, fearing the nightmares that awaited him. The silence of the room, which for many represents rest, was for him an even fiercer battlefield. The solitude of the early morning hours made every thought seem louder, every memory clearer, every sensation more real. His mind gave him no respite. The impact on his mentality was devastating. He began to believe there was no way out, that his destiny was to live forever with that hidden pain. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because loneliness is one of the most universal experiences, yet we rarely talk about it openly. Who hasn't felt misunderstood? Who hasn't carried anguish in silence, afraid of being judged or not being taken seriously? The difference is that, in his case, the intensity of this loneliness was multiplied by the weight of war memories. But, in essence, we've all known the emptiness of being surrounded by people and yet feeling like no one truly sees us. This isolation wasn't just social, but spiritual. He stopped believing anyone could reach out. Conversations seemed too superficial. Advice seemed simplistic given the complexity of his pain. When they tried to encourage him, it all sounded like a distant noise, incapable of touching his reality. It was as if he lived in a parallel universe, where his own truth was shrouded in a dense silence. This silence wasn't just external, but internal, a suffocation of his own voice, as if he had lost the right to express what he felt. And yet this very silence, painful as it was, eventually became a space of revelation. It was in this silence that he began to realize he could no longer wait for others to understand what he himself could not yet put into words. It was in this silence that he realized he needed to make different decisions, to break the cycle of isolation that, while seemingly protecting him, was also slowly destroying him. This journey, marked by loneliness, is a reflection of what so many face, the need to look within and acknowledge the weight of one's own pain before seeking transformation. His isolation wasn't just a consequence of war, but a true reflection of how we deal with our invisible battles. We flee from the gaze of others, believing it's better to hide than to reveal, to remain silent than to expose. But this mentality of self-exile only strengthens the walls around us. He didn't know it yet, but the first step to finding peace was precisely breaking that silence, accepting that vulnerability isn't a sign of weakness, but of courage. Right there, I'm on this journey too. The breaking point didn't arrive in a grandiose fashion. It wasn't a spectacular event for everyone to witness. On the contrary, it was silent, intimate, almost imperceptible to outsiders. After so many days of lingering between memories and silences, there came a night when the soldier simply couldn't bear the weight of the memories any longer. He sat alone, staring at a wall, and his mind, as so many times before, returned to the battlefield. But this time, something was different. The memory didn't come as an isolated scene, but as an avalanche, bringing smells, screams, sounds, and images of pain in a single instant. It was unbearable. His heart raced, his hands sweated, his body trembled. And there he realized there was no way to continue living like this. That was the limit, the moment when he would either find a path to transformation or be swallowed by his own memories. The silence that followed was even more frightening. He realized that even surrounded by people, he was completely alone in his battle. It was in that moment that something changed forever. Not because the pain had disappeared, but because for the first time he saw the hidden truth. Continuing to endure everything alone would get him nowhere. It was like rowing aimlessly in a stormy sea. This revelation was harsh, but it opened a small ray of light in the midst of the darkness. It was the realization that something had to be done, that life could not be defined solely by the painful memories of the past. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic because all of us at some point face what we might call a breaking point. It could be in a silent dawn, in an unexpected conversation, or even in a seemingly banal moment of the day. Suddenly we realize we can no longer continue at the same pace, that we need to make different decisions, that our mindset needs to change. This moment, though painful, is also an invitation to transformation. It's when we understand that living only in memories, whether good or bad, prevents us from moving forward. And this impact is more powerful than we're often willing to admit. In the soldier's case, the rupture was marked by a mixture of despair and revelation. He understood that he could no longer rely on silence as a refuge, because silence had become a prison. He could no longer rely solely on physical strength, because his soul was exhausted. This realization led him to an internal decision. Either he began to seek a way out, or he would be slowly consumed by memories. This moment is universal, because even outside the context of war, we all have a moment when we realize that the path we've followed can no longer continue in the same way. Whether faced with loss, a mistake, a disappointment, or hidden pain, life always confronts us with this limit. The curious thing is that this limit, despite seeming like the end, can actually be the beginning. It's when we drop our masks, when we face our vulnerability, and when we finally recognize that we can't win every battle alone. This is the revelation that changes everything. Admitting weakness isn't about losing, it's about opening the door to true transformation. For the soldier, this decision wasn't easy. Pride, shame, and fear still haunted him. But the impact of the breaking point was so great that there was no turning back. He knew he needed to begin a new journey, even without knowing exactly where it would lead. This breaking point was the turning point, and from there, choices became inevitable. It was impossible to continue pretending everything was fine. It was impossible to maintain isolation without realizing it was destroying him. It was in this context of pain and revelation that he took the first step toward change, however timid, however uncertain. And this first step, however small it seemed, had immense significance. It was proof that he had decided not to be merely a victim of memories, but someone willing to write a new chapter of his life. Comment there. That makes sense to me. When that breaking point reached him, the soldier realized he could delay no longer. His body screamed for rest, his mind begged for relief, and his soul sought an outlet greater than mere survival. It was then that he took the first step toward peace. It wasn't a spectacular gesture, with no applause or witnesses, but rather a silent decision to try something different. He accepted the idea of seeking help. This simple movement, almost invisible to outsiders, represented a true internal revolution. For the first time, he admitted that he alone couldn't carry the weight he carried on his shoulders. At first, the journey felt strange. Entering a therapy room, opening up to a stranger, revisiting memories he'd tried to bury for so long. It was all painful. But there, little by little, he began to realize that giving voice to his memories didn't make them more frightening. On the contrary, each word he spoke was like a piece of darkness fading away. This transformation didn't happen overnight, but it was in the process of facing his pain with courage that he discovered something essential. Healing didn't lie in erasing memories, but in learning to live with them without them controlling him. Family support also became a fundamental pillar. Although he initially tried to distance himself, afraid of being a burden, he began to allow those who loved him to be present. A gesture of affection, a simple conversation, a silent hug, all of this showed him that he didn't have to face his inner war completely alone. The impact of these small actions was profound. He began to realize that loneliness wasn't fate, but a choice he could gradually change. This revelation brought a new mindset, that accepting help didn't make him weaker, but more human. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic because there's a hidden truth we often overlook. Great changes rarely begin with grand gestures, but rather with seemingly small steps. It was when he decided to write his memories in a notebook that he discovered the power of writing as a form of liberation. It was when he chose to take a walk at sunset, instead of locking himself in his room, that he felt reconnected with the life around him. It was when he dedicated a few minutes to prayer, seeking strength beyond himself, that he realized there was still something greater sustaining his journey. These small decisions, accumulated daily, gradually became pillars that supported his transformation process. He understood that waiting for a perfect moment to change was a trap. There was no right day, no exact time, no ideal scenario. There was only the decision to begin, even amidst the chaos. This was the revelation that changed his trajectory. Every simple action, no matter how small, had an invisible but real impact, like seeds that, planted in silence, grow into trees of hope. It was in this realization that he rediscovered a spark of faith, not only in something greater but also in himself. After all, if he could take the first step, he could take the second, and so on. This journey, which began with a timid gesture, gradually shaped a new outlook on life. The transformation wasn't quick or linear, but it was real. He began to realize that he didn't need to erase the past to build the future. He simply needed to learn to use his scars as reminders of resilience. What had previously been mere pain began to transform into testimony, and this testimony would become not only a support for him, but also an inspiration to others facing invisible battles. Comment there. I'm on this journey too. The invisible scars were the hardest to bear. The soldier's body no longer showed open wounds, and to many, he seemed completely recovered. But inside, there were scars that wouldn't heal with time. These emotional wounds didn't bleed in the eyes of others, but burned with every memory. Every moment his mind insisted on returning to the battlefield. The most painful thing was knowing that to outsiders he seemed fine. People commented, "How lucky you came back in one piece," but they had no idea of the storm that still raged within him. The hidden truth is that emotional suffering is often overlooked, as if it doesn't carry the same weight as physical pain. But the impact is profound, capable of changing someone's mindset, altering their way of seeing the world, distorting even the smallest everyday gestures. He knew he couldn't show his inner wounds with a bandage or a visible scar, and this made everything even more lonely. The silence he maintained was, in a way, a disguise to avoid frightening those around him. However, each sleepless night, each heavy sigh, and each thought that found no rest were clear signs that the battles were not over. How many invisible scars do you also carry within you? Perhaps they're not memories of war, but memories of losses, rejections, mistakes, or pain that have marked your journey. These scars shape who we are, influence our decisions, and often define the course of our journey. But just as the soldier began to realize, these marks can also become points of revelation, because deep down, they're not just signs of pain, but also of survival. Each invisible scar is proof that, even amidst the chaos, you managed to carry on. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic because there's something transformative about recognizing our inner scars. Behind the scenes, while everyone seems to be living normally, there are those who struggle daily with thoughts no one will ever know. And it's in this silent space that the greatest battles are fought. The difference lies in how we choose to deal with these scars. Some try to hide them, pretending they don't exist, while others face them head-on and use them as part of their own reconstruction. This decision is crucial. Either the pain defines us forever, or it becomes fuel for transformation. In the soldier's case, his invisible scars manifested themselves in subtle yet intense ways. A lost look in the middle of a conversation, a sudden tightness in his chest at a familiar sound, the difficulty of surrendering completely to the present without the past pulling him back. He understood that he could not erase anything he had experienced, but he was also beginning to understand that his memories no longer needed to be mere prisons. Little by little, he began to see a hidden power there, a silent revelation. His wounds were also signs that he had resisted, that he had come this far. This realization didn't immediately free him, but it planted a new mindset within him. It was like seeing his own life through a different lens, recognizing that each mark had a real impact, but also a potential source of meaning. Just as scars on the body tell a story, invisible ones also carry messages that need to be heard. And it is in this process of listening internally, of accepting one's own pain without denying its existence, that true transformation is born. Comment there. That makes sense to me. The discovery of peace didn't happen suddenly, like a flash of lightning that erases all shadows. It was a slow process, almost imperceptible at first, but which gradually began to reshape the soldier's life. He didn't forget the war, nor could he. The images, sounds, and memories remained, but the difference lay in how he began to deal with them. Instead of running away from them or letting them dominate every moment, he began to learn to live with them without losing his serenity. This was the true milestone of his transformation, realizing that peace lay not in forgetting, but in reconciling with what he had experienced. There came a moment when he realized he needed to forgive, not just others, but himself as well. Forgive himself for having survived when so many didn't. Forgive himself for the mistakes he believed he had made. This act of inner liberation opened the door for a new perspective on his own journey. The weight of guilt, which had held him captive for so long, began to dissolve. The hidden truth is that peace isn't born when we find all the answers, but when we decide not to carry the weight of the questions alone. This decision had a profound impact on his mindset and opened doors for him to truly begin anew. Another powerful revelation came when he allowed himself to serve others. By sharing his experience with those experiencing similar pain, he realized that his story wasn't just a burden but also an inspiring testimony. He began attending support groups, speaking with families, and even reaching out to young people facing emotional crises. Behind the scenes of this choice, he discovered something he hadn't expected. Every time he helped someone, he also helped himself. Each act of compassion was like a balm applied to his own invisible scars. That's when he discovered that service wasn't just an act of kindness, but a profound form of healing. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because there's a transformative aspect we often overlook. Peace doesn't come only when we seek external solutions, but when we find a space for reconciliation within ourselves. This soldier began cultivating moments of silence, no longer as a prison, but as a place of encounter. Prayer became part of this process, an intimate dialogue that reconnected him with something greater than his own pain. In these pauses, he discovered that he didn't need to be strong all the time, that he could simply be human. It was in this spiritual reunion that he felt true serenity, the kind that is independent of external circumstances but born from within. He realized then that the war would always be part of his story, but it no longer needed to define his future. The memories would still exist, but they no longer had the power to paralyze his life. This revelation was like opening a window in a dark room. The darkness didn't disappear entirely, but light found space to enter. The impact was immense. His mindset changed, and with it, so did his way of seeing the world. From a prisoner of memories, he became someone who acknowledged them without allowing them to dominate him. This balance was what brought serenity. This journey showed that peace is not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. He didn't forget the war, but he learned to find peace amidst the memories. This truth resonates with us all because, to varying degrees, we all carry invisible scars. And perhaps the path isn't to erase the past, but to learn to transform it into strength, wisdom, and testimony. The soldier understood this, and from that moment on began to walk more lightly, more consciously, more freely. Comment there. That makes sense to me. What makes this story so powerful is that deep down, it's not just about one soldier. It's about all of us. Because to varying degrees and in varying contexts, each person carries battles that no one else can see. We don't need to be on a battlefield to know what it feels like to fight against memories, feelings, and pain that insist on lingering. Each person has their own inner trenches. Some face losses they haven't yet overcome. Others carry scars of rejection. Some live with the guilt of failed decisions. And there are also those who constantly try to disguise an emptiness they can't explain. The hidden truth is that silently, almost all of us have fought wars that shaped who we are today. And it is at this point that the message becomes universal. Because just as the soldier learned that peace doesn't come by erasing the past, but by transforming it into something greater, we too have the chance to reframe our pain. A scar, when viewed merely as a reminder of suffering, seems like a burden, but when seen as proof of endurance, it becomes a testament to victory. This shift in mindset is what differentiates those who wallow in their memories from those who learn to walk with them. The impact of this revelation is enormous. You don't need to eliminate your pain to move forward, but you can learn to use it as strength to build something new. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because transformation happens precisely behind the scenes where no one sees it. It's in that moment when you cry alone but still decide to get up. It's when you feel like giving up, but find a reason, however small, to keep going. These small decisions are the turning points that build the journey of someone who will later be seen as an inspiration. This is exactly what the soldier discovered, that victory didn't lie in forgetting the war, but in not allowing it to define who he would be from then on. This message goes beyond circumstances. It's about choices, because we don't have control over everything that happens, but we do have power over how we react. The revelation that changes everything is realizing that pain doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be a painful chapter, but it can also be the foundation on which we build our strength. How many people today live trapped in memories because they believe nothing can change? The truth is that change begins when we accept that our scars are not signs of defeat, but of survival. This is the kind of impact that resonates throughout any human journey, because when we can look at our marks honestly, we begin to see that they are in fact proof that we are still alive, that we resist, that there is still something to right. The soldier is not just a distant example. He is a mirror that shows that we can all learn to transform pain into strength. It's not an easy path, but it is real. And by understanding this, he stopped being just a survivor and became someone capable of inspiring others with his story. This universal message calls us to reflect on our own battles. It doesn't matter whether they were emotional, spiritual, or psychological. They all have the power to shape us. The big question is, will we allow these scars to imprison us, or will we use them as symbols of overcoming? When we make this decision, we discover that even suffering can become a living testament to victory. That's when life begins to take on new meaning, because we understand that pain doesn't define us, but how we deal with it does. Right there, I'm on this journey too, and perhaps listening to this story, you too felt something awaken within you, because deep down, each word speaks not just about one soldier, but about all of us who at some point must face our own invisible battles. And have you ever found peace where there was only pain? Have you ever had that experience where it seemed impossible to start over, but somehow you discovered a strength you didn't even know existed? Sharing this can be more important than you imagine. Often a simple phrase in the comments can turn into a silent hug for someone going through the same path. This space we're building here is more than a place to hear moving stories. It's a place of connection, reflection, and mutual support. When you leave your comment, it's not just your voice that speaks. It's a link that helps sustain this invisible network that forms between us all. It's as if each written word is a reminder that no one needs to walk alone, that there's always someone who understands, who identifies, who feels similarly. And that's the hidden truth that gives meaning to all of this. Pain can be lonely, but overcoming it can be shared. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic because there's something powerful about turning this interaction into practical action. When you like this video, you're saying, I believe this message deserves to be shared. It's a simple gesture, but it has a huge impact because it helps this story reach others who may be silently struggling with their own invisible scars. Likewise, by subscribing and activating the bell, you're not only following more stories, but also participating in an ongoing journey of transformation and reflection. It's as if you're saying to yourself, I want to continue growing with this kind of message. I want to continue finding meaning in the midst of struggles. This decision, however small it may seem, is a seed you plant in your own journey. It's a way of saying that you value not only your story, but also that of others who are here, listening, reflecting, and allowing themselves to be touched. Because ultimately, transformation happens not only individually, but also in the community we choose to build together. Every gesture, every word, and every action has the power to create a space for healing, impact, and revelations that can transform lives. Comment there. That makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, it's because this story spoke to you in some way, and that's why I want to invite you to continue walking with me. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future stories that, like this one, can bring reflection, hope, and that feeling that we are never alone in the battles we face. Please also leave a like, because this simple gesture shows that the connection we created throughout the video resonated with you. And if you want to make a special mark, write in the comments, I'm with you until the end. It'll be amazing to know who's been with me this far. And look, you don't have to stop here. There's a video right here that complements this topic. Click and continue with me there.